Hi guys, in the previous session we learned about Docker volumes. Today let's learn about bind mounts. We know that Docker volume can be used for persisting the data even after deleting the container. But we have one more problem with the containers. While developing your application, if you modify your source code, then to reflect that change in your application, you have to rebuild the image again. Then from that image, you have to recreate the container. Then only that source code changes will reflect. Then what if I want to see the source code changes in my application real time? For that use cases, we can use bind mounts. Bind mounts are your Docker volumes only, but you can attach that into path in your host machine. So if you modify the source code in that particular path, in that host machine, the changes will reflect in container in real time. So volume will provide data persistency and bind mount will provide data persistency, also real-time editing of your source code. So let's see in the demo how bind mount works. Currently there are no running containers. In previous session, we attached the named volume, that is this feedback. Now I want to attach this whole source code folder as a bind mount. For that I can use same -v flag. In case of named volume, we provided only name for the volume, that is feedback. In case of bind mount, we have to provide the absolute path of our source code folder, then colon and directory in the container. This will attach our whole source code folder into a folder in a container. Let's run this now. Now it created a container, and if you check the application in browser, it's not working. And if you run docker ps command, the container is not running. And if I check the log of that particular container using docker logs command, I can see the error here. It cannot find the express module. It is a Node.js module actually. Previously it was working fine, but what's the issue now? After adding bind mount, we got this issue. So what happened here is, when we run this command, whole source code folder data is added to /up directory, and it overwrites the data that already exists in /up directory. If I check Docker file here, we have the step to copy the package.json file. Also, we have a step to copy whole source code here. And when we run npm install, it will install all the node dependencies. Also, it will create a new directory as node modules. And when we run this command, this bind mount will override the content in /up directory. That means it will also override the node modules directory. That's why we got an error like express module is not installed earlier. So to resolve this, we can add one more volume here. If we give like this, node modules directory will be preserved. And we are not providing any name or path here. That means this is a anonymous volume. So this is one of the use case for anonymous volume also. Let me run this now. It created a new container now, and the application is working now. And I can add a feedback also now. So now let me modify the source code. Let me modify feedback.html file, that is in pages directory, vi feedback.html. I added valuable here. So right now here we have provided your feedback title, and if I save this file now, it should add an additional word valuable. File is saved. If I refresh this page, you can see there is a change here. Now it is provide your valuable feedback. So this is the use case for bind mounts. Data is persisted. Also it is editable in real time. Also if I attach the bind mount, I don't want container to change my files in host machine. If source code changes are there in host machine, it should reflect in container, but vice versa should not happen. For that I have to make this volume as read only. I can add :ro here. Ro means read only. And if I make whole directory as RO, for that we have a conflict here, because in this particular application, it stores the user response in temp directory as well as in feedback directory. So temp and feedback directory should be read write, not read only. If you add arrow here, whole /up directory will be read only. So to avoid that, we should add feedback and temp directory as separate volumes. Here feedback directory is already added, and we have not added RO here. So feedback is writable folder here. And I can add one more volume /app/temp and without RO. So, and /app is RO. And whichever command is bigger and specific path, that will take precedence. Even if we add /app as RO, /app/temp is writable, because bigger path wins. So with the RO flag, we can make volume as read only. Also we can manage the volume with docker volume command. If we run docker volume ls, it will list all the volumes present in this particular host. Also we can use docker volume rm to remove the volumes. If I run this feedback volume, will be removed. When I run docker volume ls, only 2 volumes are present now. Also we can create volume using docker volume create volume name. If I run this now, a new volume is created now. Generally we don't use this particular command. While creating the container, when we use -v flag, it will create the volume by default. So there is no need to run docker volume create command. But if you want to explicitly create a volume, then you can use docker volume create command. Also you can run docker volume -help command. It will list all available commands. For example, I can run docker volume inspect command, so that it will list everything about that particular volume. Also in terms of docker file, one more question is, do we need this copy command to copy the source code? Because bind mount already have the source code. Let's comment this instruction and rebuild the image. First let me remove the old container and old image. Old image is removed. Let me create a new image now. It created a new image now. Let me create the container now. and the container is created now. And also app is working in browser. Also app is working fine even without this copy instruction. So this copy instruction is not required, right? That's not true actually. We use bindmount while developing the application because we change the source code frequently, and if you want to know whether it is working or not, we use bindmount there. But when you deploy the code in production server, we don't use bindmount there. We use volume for data persistency in production also, but we don't use bindmount in production. So in that case, we should include this copy command in Docker file. So I have removed the comment now and I will save my Docker file. So we learned about Docker volume that is used for data persistency. So there are two types of volume, anonymous volume and named volume. Anonymous volume we can create using Docker file, or we can use -v flag. And for named volume, we will give a name for that particular volume. And bindmount we use for data persistency and for real-time editing. And also you can use RO flag for make volume as read only. And you can use Docker volume commands for any actions on Docker volumes. And in Docker file, copy instruction is required because we don't use bindmount in production. So we learned all of these. So that's it for today. Subscribe and check out other videos too. And keep learning.